thank you for coming and welcome. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we meet on Aboriginal lands and pay my respects to Aboriginal elders, past, present and emerging. I'd like to also extend that acknowledgement and respect to the many First Nations people that join us today, as well as those that we're working with in the exhibition. In particular to our co-curators here and the artists in this project we're going to speak to, and pay respects equally to their peoples and their lands and their culture. It's my great pleasure to welcome Sheelasha and Hitman here today, the co-curators of this project, TAMBA. For a very quick introduction to Sheelasha and Hitman, they are both individual artists and curators based in Kathmandu. While they both maintain individual art practices, they also co-founded the artist collective Art Tree Nepal in 2012-2013, and more recently the initiative Kalakulo. Together they have co-curated the Kathmandu Triennial 2077, Tarun Sherpa for the Nepal Pavilion at the Venice Biennale in 2022, Garden of 10 Seasons at Savvy Contemporary in Berlin in 2022. And in the past year, they've also been part of the curatorial teams for Colombo Scope in 2023 and Biennale Jogja in 2023 as well. So working in Sri Lanka and Indonesia as well. Hitman was actually included in the 8th Asia Pacific Triennial, and we have one of his paintings in the collection. And that's actually kind of really the seed of developing this project over a long period of time. And a friend was saying to me last night, you know, one of the things that is really special about the Triennial is that you do get this opportunity to work with people and maintain relationships, and they often develop into other things. Hitman and Sheelasha have hosted me a couple of times when I visited and really helped me and helped QAGOMA work with artists from Nepal, and really appreciate all of that guidance, including through COVID when we spoke a lot, and I think was also when kind of the ideas started forming while we were working with Subhash Limbu, who's joined us today for his work that we're showing both at Kathmandu Triennale and the last Asia Pacific Triennial. We started talking more and more, and I think, you know, the seeds were kind of sown for this project. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Tarun, thank you.
So to begin, I thought, you know, the first time we met in Kathmandu some years ago, I was really struck by the artists collective Art Tree Nepal, and meeting you all kind of together in the studio. So could you tell us a little bit about this story of you both kind of becoming artists and forming that artist collective?
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you Tarun for lovely introduction. It's really nice to be friend with you and continuing our relationships, you know. So yeah, I just want to go fast forward. So after we graduate, so like yesterday also Sheelasha shared a little bit about the situation of education system in our part. So it's very much Eurocentric and very colonial, you know, like syllables. So when we were studying in our art school, Nepal was going through this political transformations. So lots of, it was, you know, like going through People's War, and also always there were mass protests and demonstrations outside of the college, and people were killed and injured, and you know, like that we were studying all this Van Gogh, Picasso, and all these great masters. And so yeah, after graduate, we felt like it what we studied is not representing our reality or like relevant to our reality and our lived experience. So in a way, after graduate, it became like a learning on learning process for us. And so archery, all like my colleagues, it forms like organically. It was not intention to create these collectives or like. It started as a sharing studios because to survive and continue our practice, and also like us, lots of like indigenous marginalized people or like the new generations were slowly uh, 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 slowly, like realizing the situations of our history and also, so it became like a kind of going back to our communities, to our roots, and learning more about, and also being part of this large movement of uh, sovereignty, fight for sovereignty, and also recognizing, like or establishing our identity in a way.
And place where we could be vulnerable in the times where, especially at the time, it was very black and white, and so many people were sacrificing themselves for the sake of their identity. And we would also like to acknowledge the people who have given their lives so that we are here, where we have this freedom to speak and are still fighting so many people. So that space also became a place where we could kind of like be vulnerable and talk about our insecurities and traumas, and try to kind of console each other in a way.
And I mean, you touched a little bit on the activism, but and within that group, and it's artists from a number of different Indigenous communities and with families in different parts of Nepal. And I know part of this collective, I mean, it's called an artist collective, but you actually do a lot of other work. And part of that, I know, over a long period of time has been with different members, travelling out to communities, documenting and archiving, but also advocating for communities, helping them through struggles and land rights and human rights issues. Can you tell us a little bit about that work as well and how that's kind of connected to your art practice as well?
I think primarily what was happening is the mainstream history which was taught to us forcefully was not accommodating to so many of our realities. So we are, the artery, acknowledging artery, we are from 5 different indigenous community, and so we too make Limbu, Subhas Tamang and Lavkan Chaudhary, and all of us come from different communities. We speak different language. And also I have to acknowledge that indigenous community is not monolithic, and we have difference. It's not, yes, we are indigenous, but indigenous community themselves, some of us have casteism within us, like in my community. Some of us have assimilated into institutional religion, etc., etc. But also some of us are based on agricultural practices, some are based on water-based practices, etc. And so I think to begin with was understanding our own communities and each other. And one of the major questions we had 10, 12 years ago was like, why don't we know about ourselves, and why do we know about this certain class so much? And why don't we know about each other? And also, to give you a little bit of context, Nepal geographically is very vast, but Nepal as a country, which is now a nation state, is a smaller landscape, but so diverse. And in terms of proximity, we're not that far from each other in that way. And our communities were connected to each other in so many ways back then in the history also. And we're like, how come we don't know anything about each other? Like, how is that even possible? And one of the earliest thing was sharing resources, as Hitman said, for survival. And that also we inherited from our elders about sharing resources. Staying in community came very organically for us. But also sharing knowledge each other. And so going to different places was not going to another different community. So our friends, they were going back to their own communities to try to understand and try to meet elders and who were like dying without being able to pass the knowledge. And there was this desperation as well. So all of us went together in different, so because geographically we were from different parts of Nepal, and I'm from Kathmandu, and despite the fact I'm from Kathmandu because of so many things, like tourism, exoticization, even I don't know so much about my own people, so we're like going all these places together, but at the same time documenting those practices, because it really came from that desperation. And it did happen, because sometimes we would go in the place and then we would talk about, oh, do you know about this song, or like marking practice, and people would say, oh, she just passed like 3 months ago, and some one time like 2 weeks ago, and we're like, you know, this anxiety, like, oh my God, like it was really like pushed by that anxiety in the beginning phase, and now we're like slowly started to kind of little bit be more kind of like not calm down, but like be able to manage many things we're doing in a more slightly slower pace. Yeah.
Thank you. And the most amazing photos of traveling to those places throughout Nepal. And I mean, that leads into a little bit of the activities you do with Kalakulo, right? Which is, I mean, you talked about kind of, I guess we could say archiving, documenting, but it's ensuring that knowledge is continued and preserved and carried on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Kalakulo?
So Kalakulu also, again, similar kind of story, because Kalakulu is an organization, but we function as a collective. And what is common in both of these spaces is we have no one person directing it. There's no, like, you know, one leader, so everybody is kind of same. We don't take any decision without no one person is leading, basically. So if everybody's got vote, then only we kind of go forward with it. And everybody's leading different thing according to their interest. Kalakulo kind of formed also with the need of to have some sort of structured organization which is registered to the government. Because archery we really resisted. We resisted taking so many funds because it comes from embassies and it comes with so many, you know, like, or there's like something we resisted through archery was funds, because we don't want to be associated with problematic people, etc. But it also has a downside that we don't have resources in so many ways. But Kalakulo is slightly different in a way, because the member of Kalakulo, Deepti Sherchan, Priyankar Chand, and we have Vishal. So they also come from graphic designing, anthropology, research background, and their interest is also overlaps in what we already do, but also archiving modern history of Nepal, but in the context of how modernism was blatantly translated, while it is not just copy-paste from European ideology. There's so many local contexts as well. So we're kind of bringing in that context where artists were traveling to, for example, Japan, in the Biennale there, and what is non-European connections. And for APT also it has that. Nepal was like first was I think, but it has that connection of breaking away from European connection. That's particularly we're interested in the reason. We do a lot of archiving and documentation. Also interested in people, artists who are in the 80s, 90s now, and also work in outside of Kathmandu.
Yeah, thank you. And so turning to this project specifically, which is entitled TAMBA, bringing together the works of 7 different artists, but also a lot of other kind of collaborators and people that have assisted in different ways as well. And it brings a focus to the great depth of culture and knowledge and practices from different communities, as well as activism and struggle and recent history. Can you tell us a little bit about the roots or the initial thinkings around this kind of concept of this project for TAMBA?
So yeah, it's a small glimpse of like what we've been doing together since long time. So here, yeah, we have only 7 artists, 6 from Nepal and 1 from Kalimpong, Northeast India now. So most of the like the physical works you see here are mostly new works, but it has a connection with their like earlier practices and the continued projects they've been involved. So Tamba, it's derived from a Tamang community. It's a very special person, respected person who sing the songs of the origin, like pass the knowledge of Tamang communities, knowledge, wisdoms, and also history of their community to the new generations. It's been in practice like since generation to generations. So when we start, so in the entrance, there is a small short animation video by Subhas about the Tamba. And I just want to read short, like the poems from the animations. When the age means its end, 7 moons and 7 suns are scanned in the sky. The forests lose their breath, soil crumbles like wax. Blunders melt away, lakes start to swim, and the world is swallowed by water. By the grace of spirits. So spirits, it's not like a particular spirit. So it can be our ancestors, guardians, and like many spirits that we acknowledged and respect. Earth is born again, green grass grows, fern flowers unfold, and only then do humans take this step, their step. The Tambawala stories of creations, it's from the Tambawala, which is a story of creations. So yeah, so then we had this conversation, Sheelasha and me, and also with the artists, and how like we present some works in APT. So we were also in conversation with you. So for us, then we thought artists can be, like representative as a Tamba for these projects, and how they shared, like their personal experiences, lived experience, and also shared the collective history of what their communities has been gone through in past, present, and also how they can imagine their futures. I think Sheelasha.
Sheelasha, you also mentioned you wanted to show a little bit about the lives of these artists, a little glimpse into their lives.
Yeah, so what is here in the room and the video there is actually a very small glimpse of what actually artists actually lives in their life. So they live quite a layered and complex lives where they are doing multiple things at the same time, also because of the necessity in the position they are in. And then art making sometimes becomes trauma dumping sometimes becomes healing process, sometimes becomes archiving the ancestral knowledge, sometimes becomes erasing the history which was enforced to them. They are doing research, archiving documentation, and also one thing what they and we do is we also give the archive material to the community because then, despite the fact we are from the same community, we should also acknowledge that it's not the same base ground reality we are living in sometimes. So we have to acknowledge that also, not to take that for granted. So, for example, when we were researching Tharu, documenting Tharu histories, we, Lovekant and we, this one, that terracotta one also gave the archival material to the research center. And that particular, so also, since I'm saying that, that particular terracotta is a small piece of a monument which was made in far western part of Nepal, Bardia, where most of the people were disappeared during the People's War, and like most of the people were from Tharu indigenous community. So the monument is one of a kind also because it was initiated by the families of the victim. So after the monument was made, everybody came together, especially the victims' family, and put on the lights and candle there. So it became a way to express, and people were crying, and also they felt hard because they were erased by their stories were erased by the government for so long also. Also, I do want to, we have written this in the catalog also, and also here I do want to mention that the kind of intangible experiences artists go through, for example here, and with consent I'm saying, with Lovekant's consent, that while he was making that monument, he had a very frequently bad nightmares where victims and people who were raped and killed and disappeared would frequently come in his dreams and sit in front. And sometimes, like for example, one time when he had switched off the fan and he fell asleep, and then in his dream, Sita Chowdhury came, who was raped by multiple armies and government officials at the time. And now, till this date, her body is not found. And then he was very kind of like, he got like bit terrified also. But when he woke up, the fan he had shut off was on at that time. So, you know, like all this experience, even if we do not see this in a paranormal way, this is the kind of weight artists are carrying, the kind of trauma they are going, and it's just not a monument in that sense. So, and I have to say, in all of these works, there are so many layered stories. So that's why I'm saying like, and lived experience, and that's why I'm saying like it's just a small snapshot of their actual lived experiences.
Yeah, so it starts from like story of origin. So the story of how this planet was formed, how we, you know, like came to life. Then it's slowly traveled to, you know, like different timeline, historical timelines, and how different indigenous communities were oppressed or subjugated or dehumanized in a different time period by different rulers. And their struggle of resistance and existing, you know. And then also, there are also nuances of, you know, like from their own community, nuances of like indigenous knowledge, wisdoms, and like the stories of mobilities migrating from one place to another place, like makes works. Then in the recent history, how lots of indigenous and marginalized Dalit communities joined Marxist, Leninist, and Maoist communist movement. Like you can see in Jagdish's works and in those, and of course Lovekant's works. Like when we talk about Jagdish's works, then it's the drifting towards the Red Star. So he delved into his father's archives. So his father's, when he was young, he migrated from village to Kathmandu and joined this Thangka industry,
Thangka painting.
painting industry. Back then, it was the only way for lots of Tamang community to, earn money for men, and women, they joined the carpet industry. So he looked back to his family archives and materials like socialist materials, magazines from his father, and how his father was involved into labor right movement and communism, communist movements. So same with like, yeah,